Welcome back to Fortitude, everyone. Brinton Payne, JW Wilson. Welcome to the Captex Bank studio. We are Fortitude.
A studio for the ages.
Studio for the ages, indeed. One still under construction.
What does that mean, even?
I don't know. Enlighten us, please.
No idea.
Okay.
You've been watching that Johnny Depp trial?
I have not.
It is pure bliss. It is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And a friend of mine and I were talking about it. It was like, because we were going to talk about crime, and they're in a court. I don't know if it's a court of crime or whatever, but it's probably civil court. But court of crime, they don't even have that criminal court. It's like, what's the point in all the media coverage of this trial? Is there some type of like public benefit?
Spectacle.
Yeah. I mean, it's for advertising, I guess, Okay, back to it.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Already.
So today, BP, these two cats are going to introduce something new to the Roxo Media House. But before we get into that, we're going to introduce each of them individually.
Okay.
To my left is a guy named John Henry. John Henry is the executive editor for Fort Worth Inc., and he's a writer for Fort Worth, Texas Magazine. Did I get that right?
Fort Worth Magazine, yeah.
Fort Worth Magazine.
Oh, the applause. Huh?
Yeah.
There it is. Of course.
We'll see if Jake
Deservedly
gets
so. You've done a lot of really cool stuff in your literary career. Tell us a little about yourself, John, before we get into why you two are hanging out with us today.
Well, I am a Fort Worth native, born and bred down at Harris Hospital, which probably everybody else who's ever been born in Fort Worth, Texas is.
There were probably some home births at some point. I don't think everyone.
Bathtubs and stuff, yeah.
Just kidding you, John Henry. Keep going.
Anyway, went to school here. Went to school at Texas Tech. I know that's probably not the best thing for.
It's quite okay.
No, that's
yes.
good.
Yes,
that's good.
Well,
Where'd you go to high school?
diversity.
His wife probably
What high school?
loves that.
I went to Nolan Catholic High
Oh,
School.
very good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad. Yeah.
Basketball team?
I was on the basketball team.
Did they have a good one then?
Yes.
Yes.
Back-to-back state runner-ups.
No kidding.
Runners-up.
I remember around that era, Nolan was really good. They hadn't really hit the football. I don't think. I mean, did you play Nolan from a TVS? Did you play them?
We did
in high school.
We did.
Were they good?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if they had like risen as much. I do remember the basketball.
In my 4 years, we won 4 games.
I wouldn't call that success, though.
Out of how many?
They played 10. They played 10 every year.
Oh yeah, 10.
I think so.
That's not a very
so John Henry. I must digress a little bit, real quick. So you were growing up in Fort Worth, Nolan High School. When did writing become something you were interested in?
Probably when I was in college. I was a history major and did a ton of writing.
Okay.
And discovered I really, really loved it. And so I decided, I'm going to try to do this newspaper career when I got out of school, which is what I did. I started out as kind of an editor at Star Telegram, and editor and writer, and then I did more editing, then I did more writing, and then when I left there the first time, I was the Sunday editor in sports.
Okay.
And then I went back to write. I was rehired to cover the city of Fort Worth for the Star Telegram. I did that for a couple of years, and then went on my own again as a freelancer and contractor, simply because I had more freedom to do projects. And then the great Hal Brown called me up and asked me about this job with Fort Worth Inc., which I've been there since last fall.
Okay.
What were some of those freelance projects? You covered the city of Fort Worth, and then what other stuff would you kind of do?
Shoot, my favorite project was religion. What was a religion project? It was Pope Benedict, the Pope you might be familiar with at some point in time.
We've heard of him, yes.
Yes.
Big hat.
He created this.
He's coming up next, John Henry. So let's stay on task.
He's getting up the stairs. Is that deal?
His vehicle. He's got that double decker.
Cole, will you make sure the Pope has a water?
Yes, and that his vehicle is charged or gassed up.
But anyway, there was a schism within the Episcopalian Anglican Church, and he created this pathway for Anglican churches to come into the Catholic Church. Now, the significance of that is that you're kind of yawning right now. I can tell, but
no, you're using these words like schism, like only a writer could interject that at the perfect moment.
But
like
the significance of this is that it was the most comprehensive step to reunification since Martin Luther in 15 whatever that was 1549 or 94 whatever 400 something years.
Yeah.
So there was this whole process, and of course the center of this was in Fort Worth, Texas, because of Bishop Eicher's split here in Fort Worth, Texas, and so it was ground zero was right here. So that's why we got to do it.
Oh, that's great. So what did it get published in?
Catholic News Service in D.C., the North Texas Catholic here.
Yeah. Are you Catholic?
I am.
Yeah. So was it hard to be unbiased in it?
No. I've never had that problem.
Yeah.
People think they know who I am politically, but it's like, listen, the door opens and the door closes.
Yeah.
You're a professional, ultimately. You're not a Republican or Democrat. I can't say that for everybody. But
Yep. Yeah.
John Henry, what's the life like of a person in your profession? Are you always on the hunt for something to write about? Does it just come to you?
Always sniffing for a story? Yeah,
okay.
Always got a nose out. A lot of people think that happens at the bar, and sometimes it does. But no, always looking for a good story. Storytelling is ultimately what the job is.
I'm guessing that's what led you to the gentleman to your left.
Exactly so.
What, sniffing around a bar?
Yes, that among other things.
Perhaps.
Yes, correct. Welcome to the show, your partner, your new partner, Mr. Retired Sergeant Jake White of the Fort Worth Police Department. Welcome, Jake.
Thank you.
You've been on the show before,
I have.
which we had lots of success with your show. It was fascinating, some of the stuff you've dealt with in your life. Tell us a little bit about that, and then how the two of you guys found each other.
I'm following up the Pope story, so this is going to pale in comparison.
Are you Catholic too?
No, I'm not. Thanks for asking that.
Oh, no, I was going to see if there's a biased article. I was going to just gut check John Henry.
No, so I retired in earlier this year, beginning of 2022.
You don't seem old enough to be retiring, Jake.
Yeah, I left a little early. It was just time to go.
Right.
Ready to move on and do something
young, though,
different.
too. Like, how old were you this rookie cop?
2022.
Yeah.
So young man, grew up doing
Right.
it, I guess. I don't know that I really grew up, but
yeah,
I was young when I started, yes. So,
and you needed the money.
And I needed the money. That's correct. I think I went down the wrong road, but whatever. So yeah, John and I got together and going to announce our little project coming up.
How'd you guys meet first?
So literally at the bar. That's not a joke.
Did he buy you a drink? Did you buy him a drink? What?
I say it was over a shot of Crystal Light.
Okay.
The drink,
Crystal
flavor,
meth or Crystal Light?
Light.
Okay.
The flavor enhancer, if you will.
Okay.
You didn't turn to your wife and say, I believe that's the guy who wrote that piece on the Pope and the Fort Worth being the ground zero of the Catholic
actually, I didn't.
diocese.
Was he on the bar talking about the Pope story and how everybody should be reading this?
Yeah.
He has a legendary joke. We're not going to get into it here, but he does have a legendary joke. But no, he wasn't. It was over a shot of Crystal Light to flavor my beverage, if you will. And
okay.
So one thing led to another. We start talking about this crime stuff and come up with an idea, and here we are.
The idea, Signal 51 Chronicles.
Yep.
What is Signal 51 Chronicles?
So Signal 51 Chronicles is a true crime podcast about crimes in and around Fort Worth.
Outstanding.
Yep.
There it is.
That's a little
there
late, but better late than never.
Thank you for that addition, Brinton.
Yes, you're welcome.
Our lives are now richer.
Were we already doing, I mean, not like, I knew you at the time when you guys had first met. Had we already been doing ours, or you guys, it was like before then, and then you...
No, I think you guys had already started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, because I know that you had mentioned that before. Had you ever had did you ever write crime stories before?
I've criminal courts. I've done criminal courts before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not crime court, I think believe was the way that I referenced
Court of
it.
crime, I believe.
Court of crime.
Yeah, a court of crime.
Court of crime. Yeah. So you did.
I did some court of crime. Yes.
Yes. And did you enjoy that kind of writing? Because a lot of your stuff is based on just one individual, it seems like, or
Generally.
And so that was something that you liked.
I loved it. I loved it.
Clearly audiences love it. I think,
I think so too. And it's kind of this, in addition to the examination of the crime itself, there's also the examination of the human condition and what leads perpetrators to get in the position where they are to commit these crimes.
Yep.
I think there's a lesson for society as a whole.
Yeah. So, and you probably got a little bit of that life lesson going and coming from your background, right? On a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the cool things about what we're doing is getting John's perspective on things, right?
Yeah.
And being able to tell that story. I mean, it's easy to get up and talk about, whatever crime, whatever story you want to, but composing it, there, it's interesting seeing his take on it and how it's composed, and it looks different on paper, if you will, like when we write things out.
Right.
But when you tell it, I mean, they're great.
Yeah, Brinton's right. There is a huge thirst in the world for crime podcast in general. Yeah. And now you guys are doing one that's Fort Worth centered, Fort Worth Metroplex centered. Yeah. Any of the crimes you're talking about involve you ever? Are you?
Yeah. So we've got the first three. We obviously got the first one done. Mm-hmm. One of the ones that we're going to do is a case that I worked. And with it being a true crime podcast, a lot of times people think it's just a murder podcast, right? Well, that's not what this one's going to be. Obviously, there are going to be some that involve murders, but we've also got ones that involve drug conspiracies, overdose deaths, things like that, serial criminals, if you will.
Interns on the TCU campus that might have gotten picked up for some misdemeanor. No, nothing like that.
No, nothing like that.
What is the first one you mentioned? Can we tell the story, or tell the crime that was committed, or at least the story?
So I think the overall, it's going to be a domestic related.
It's about a high profile individual in Fort Worth who takes on a younger paramour, and it ends in tragedy.
Okay. Will we get everything from beginning to finish, how it ends, how the crime was ultimately solved, the whole 9 yards?
You will, yeah. No, we're going to step into the interrogation room on this particular case, and see the detective wear this guy down, the perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator. Mm-hmm. And I think you and the audience at large will be fascinated by it.
I can't wait to hear it. I think a lot of people are excited.
What's been kind of the biggest thing that you guys have discovered about either working together and doing this, or let me back up. Let me ask the question first. What was the intent of getting together and doing this? Like, there's got to be something more than just retelling a story of crime. Like, is there something that kind of you all said we could do it and we could do it differently by?
I think there's two things that we looked at. One, we want to tell the stories that aren't always told here, right? Mm-hmm. So many of the crimes that we discuss, they may have been a quick, blurb in the newspaper or on the news or something like that, but those are the ones that we're going to dive into. The first point. The second point, we're also highlighting the fact, and we want to incorporate resources involved in it, because ultimately, when you look at a criminal act, criminal behavior, whether it be through a drug addiction or some kind of, domestic violence related case, something like that, there are resources available. And we also want to make that avenue available to people and make them recognize that they're likely not the only one in that position.
Right.
So that's, I think ultimately those were the two primary goals that we looked at was, just simply, giving back in a different way. If that's offering resources or at least linking people up with resources.
Will you be sharing your sergeant hat thoughts on these crimes and how one might see them through the lens of a police sergeant, or are you just strictly being a storyteller? If that's a
no, so that's an interesting question you bring up, because when we look at these, it's difficult. After 22 years, that's really the only hat I have when it comes to crime, right?
Yeah.
So it's different. I don't want to say that. We try to be neutral, clearly, but I'm going to look at it through the cop lens. There's no doubt about it, and that's one of the things that we talk about, and one of the things that we discuss, and kind of, frame it in the sense that, this is why the detectives are taking this step, or this is, potentially why this happened, or how the police responded, et cetera.
And I think that really does. Brenton, you asked what sets it apart. I think that's really one of the things that sets it apart is we have here an officer of, more than 20 years who has a base of knowledge through training and experience. And he's able to share that perspective on these crimes through that base of knowledge. And of course, it'll be even more fascinating when we get into the cases that he's worked. To step in those shoes as an officer.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, Jake worked in the drug, arena, and I had heard this, and you always hear this many times from police, is that, I mean, drugs run it, I mean, it's kind of the genesis for almost all crime. That there's a component, and maybe talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't want to attach a percentage to it in regards to, X number percent of crimes caused by it, but it's huge. It's significant. And it goes to show that what we're doing now as society doesn't work. All right. There's got to be a different solution, I would suspect. What that is, I don't know. I don't know that I'd be sitting here if I did have the answer to that, but yeah, I mean, 100%. That's the cause of, when you look at the murder rate in Fort Worth right now, through the roof higher than we've seen it in the last 30 years. I would suspect, and what some of the things that I know, that the vast majority of them are drug deals gone wrong, or there's some kind of nexus to that drug world or gang world, which they're so closely intertwined. It's hard to separate.
Fair.
So yeah.
John Henry, why do you think people are so ravenous about crime and wanting to know? Like we've heard of the Dirty John, which became a podcast, then became a series, and then Dr. Death, the guy in Dallas that was performing fraudulent surgeries on people, multiple people, and that now that's a big deal. Why are people so ravenous about crime podcasts?
I think it's because we relate to these cases, just because we're all here. We're all part of this community we call Earth, we call Fort Worth, and we all have these human conditions. And I think a lot of us look at these cases and go, there, but by the grace of God go I. I could have either run into this person, or I could be the perpetrator if something doesn't go right.
Right. I guess maybe from listening to you over the years, we're all, just the wrong circumstances from being involved in something, unfortunately.
Right.
God forbid that happens to any of us, but if you're in the wrong place at the right time, it doesn't matter if you're doing the right thing. You just might be unlucky. And then, unfortunately, these things happen from everyday perspective. So.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Well, from what you guys do in this first one, you think we're, as a society, closer to those moments than we've ever been before? And that's part of the fascination, is that that we're kind of gravitating towards that a little bit.
Well, I don't know, but I know that there's also this human instinct of fight or flight, and so we put ourselves in the middle of these stories, and we almost have to make a decision while we're watching or listening to this. Fight or flight, it's very instinctive.
That came up when we've talked about this first one and stuff. Is just, it's crazy how many decisions you make when you're looking at that phone on. Nobody is saying you need to listen to this, right? Like no one is, I hate to use this analogy, but gun to your head saying you've got to listen. There's that decision to delve deeper and do that. And I don't think anyone is really measuring those decisions, in what we're doing with that. I mean, it's a very curious thing, and where I think everyone's becomes more and more curious. But I also think that some of the subjects that we're exploring they're dark, and they're very heavy. And have you guys thought about? Obviously, you're pretty callous towards it, but I don't know about you, John. I mean, managing some of that, because you're going to see parts of humanity that maybe aren't the prettiest. And
I will say, I think there was. I saw two interesting things happen on this first one that we did. There's going to be a part of it that's graphic. and getting to see your reaction and your reaction. John and I,
Did you tell him about mine? I asked you not to tell him about mine.
no, I'm about to tell him about yours.
Okay.
I'll tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
The
So
world, yeah. All 5 of our
watching
listeners
John's
about it.
reaction, because we're going through this case at the same time together, and this graphic part.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think it's safe to say we both kind of froze. Whoa, this is way deeper, way darker than what we were prepared for. We're clicking a file on a computer, right? We don't know what's going to come up in terms of audio, and I mean it's dark. And then playing it for you, I forced Brinton in his front yard. I'm like, you got to hear this, man. I was like, you have to hear this. And he's like, I don't know, is it bad? And I was like, oh yeah.
Did he faint?
He made it. No, he didn't faint because he lasted 5 seconds into the audio, and that was it.
You have to understand where I come from. My Friday nights exist where my wife is watching like How to Kill Your Husband on 2020 or Dateline, and it's like, what are you? I can't watch it.
And she's enjoying it.
And then at 3 a.m. when I'm like wide awake, going, I don't know why I'm wide awake, and I'm fearful for my life,
By the way, his wife is a sponsor of your show now. I just got a call earlier.
Oh, great,
Yes,
great.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. I'm glad she followed through with that.
No, we're making light of certain things
Right.
that are. I mean, I've got to think for you, John Henry, too, not having the background of that, and some of the stories that you've written are the real high points of athletes' lives and things like that, like these beautiful kind of like putting these things together, and then you get to these types of subjects, and you're like, my goodness, this is a much different look at things.
Yeah, well, and the audio that he's talking about, it did give me pause because it was so very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so my journalist brain went straight to where the ethics of this. Should we? What is our responsibility to our listeners and to our community at large here in Fort Worth, Texas, to playing this? And we talked about it in depth, and ultimately we decided it was so integral to the story that you had to play it, and then ultimately it serves the purpose we're trying to drive, which is awareness of domestic violence in this case.
Mm-hmm. And then hopefully the awareness of it, then action can be taken ultimately.
Sure.
Right.
Will we be hearing about any of the high-profile cases over the years, like the Colin Davis or is the Tatiana Jefferson, which the trial is coming up here in this month? Does that kind of stuff ring your guys' bell, or is it more obscure cases, or do we talk about anything that is worthy in your minds?
So as we kind of hash this out, the framework behind it, we want to. More of our focus is going to be on the crimes where the story has not been told.
Okay.
Because some of those stories are just as fascinating for whatever the reason is, whatever was in the news cycle at the time, it didn't get the coverage and not everybody knows about it. Mm-hmm. When you look at them, when you look at the facts as a whole, many of them are very similar. So like I said, we're going to focus on the ones that have not necessarily been told. Perhaps there will be a time where we do one of the high profile ones. Unfortunately, we have a notebook chocked full of stories that haven't been told already. So, and I say unfortunately because again, I mean it's a dark subject. There's no doubt about it.
And I think JW2 and reference and as it concerns your question, we have various platforms to tell stories. We'll have an online presence that will blog, and I would imagine some of those instances, it probably will be more current events that we do.
We're very excited. How often will we see your podcast drop?
So our goal is dropping every Thursday.
Once
a week.
Once a week.
Yep.
Wow. That's a tall order.
And you'll have some, like one story that'll be a couple parts, right?
Correct.
That maybe, I think they kind of break them up.
The vast majority they're in depth. So there's certainly going to be multiple parts to each one, 2, 3, 4, 5. It just depends on the story.
Yeah.
You know what day yet you're dropping? Is there a particular day of the week or?
We do. May 19th.
May 19th.
Yep.
Beautiful. Okay, so May 19th, Signal 51 Chronicles. Where can they find it?
Going to be on all of the podcast platforms. We are going to have we'll announce all of our websites, social media sites coming up.
Roxo Media House obviously will house you guys.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Talk about you guys a lot. Well, I for one, I cannot wait because I know a little bit I've talked to you guys, but some of this is fascinating stuff, and it's in there, like you said, it's heavy.
Yeah.
But when you know the story without all the details, it does make it a lot more real when you hear some of the things that you guys are going to share. So
Yeah.
really appreciate you guys, and we're excited for this.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here.
Happy as heck to be here. Thank you guys.
Thanks for CapTech Bank. We appreciate you guys making this whole thing real for us. John Henry, Jake White, Signal 51 Chronicles. See you guys soon.
Thank you guys.
FORTitude FW.